Well, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. And this is the training on using My Gateway in the new longitudinal record viewer in our new platform. So we're happy to have you here. I'm going to start out. We're going to have two people do the training. We'll have Hannah do the training on getting in through My Gateway and what that looks like. And then we'll bump it over to Grant and have him do the training in the new longitudinal record viewer, and then I'll wind us back up with kind of how we're gonna go about going through the data validation and what how the process of reporting tickets and such. So Hannah, I will turn it over to you. Are you and yes, feel free to ask questions as we go through this.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah Berseth. I manage MyHin's production systems analyst team, and today I'm going to be showing you 3 pathways to the longitudinal record viewer through my gateway. Sharing my screen, you should see the My Gateway pre-prod login page. From here, I'm going to log in. Entering my credentials, completing my multi-factor authentication. I use Duo. Now, once you have your modules turned on, when you log in, you're going to land on this home page. So this home page is going to present you with the patient viewer, patient search. And from here, I will be able to search for patients that are within my acres file population. So here you'll see the acres population is pre-populated with whatever is the first acres population that's been configured in your profile. For most of you, you're going to just have one option here and it will pre-populate. If you have multiple options configured in your profile, then you'll be able to click the drop down and select between those different data sources that you're going to be searching. So from here, I can search for patients within my file using the different fields available here. So I'm going to search for a patient. I'm going to include my patient ID in this case. I'm going to put in their demographics, first name, last name, date of birth. Here you'll see it's noted what format to use in that date of birth. So when entering that, you can either scroll through and select from the calendar, or you could enter it directly. I'm going to type it in, taking care to follow that format for the date of birth. I can select a gender from this drop down, and I could also add in some other details for my search, but I'm going to go ahead and search based on that. And here it has returned a result. You can potentially get results with fewer demographics entered, but the number of demographics that you enter is going to somewhat impact your performance, how fast a result comes back for you. And something to note would be to take care to be exact when you're doing your searches. If I search something close but not quite exactly the patient's name, I'm not going to get that result. So this is how you can search for patients. Now, from here, if you click on the patient's name, it's launching the patient viewer. The patient viewer presents you with information about that patient from the active care relationship service, an overview at the top here. It's also going to present you with the care team. So these are providers, practices, and managing organizations that have a relationship with this patient across any acres file. So you'll see some of that information might vary depending on where that patient has a relationship. And then from here is where you're also able to launch that longitudinal patient record, clicking this button. I'm not going to click it at this time. I'm going to show you two other pathways to get to this point. Any questions so far?
Just a reminder that this is training for data validation. If you are working towards single sign-on to the longitudinal record viewer, this is not the path that your users will be taking.
Thank you for that note, Joanne. I'm going to go ahead and move over to Manage Acres now. In Manage Acres, again, your acres file here is going to pre-populate with whatever is the first acres file that we've put into your profile, which for most of you is just going to be one option here. I'm going to give it a moment to load. And you'll see it just preloads the relationships that exist in this file. In this case, it's given me a little warning to say that there might actually be some more records that I wasn't able to return, which I might be able to find through searching for that patient, adding some criteria. But here it's presenting me with different multiple relationships. You'll see that if the patient is in the acres file with in relation to multiple providers and practices, it's going to be listed multiple times. So here again, I'm going to search for a patient. I'm just going to go ahead and put in the first name and last name and see what I can bring up. All right, so I have all of those relationships returned for this patient. You can also search for relationships based on the provider, practice, or managing organization that has a relationship with the patient. So if I go to my test organization here and I want to see all the relationships with that, we'll return the result. This is taking a little longer, right? If I don't put as much criteria to search on, it's going to take a little longer to load. So let's see what it returns. Let's see. Might have taken too long. Make sure I have my correct source selected. I'm going to give it another try, but it may be taking too long with the parameters I've set up. All right, so this time around, I was able to pull in the results with again, a warning that there might actually be some more available, but this is what I was able to pull back. These filters here are populated with the providers, practices, and managing org information that's available in the health directory. So that's where that information is coming from. Now, along with searching for patients here, you're also able to add new relationships to your selected acres file. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to enter a some test demographics. I'm going to go ahead and fill out the minimal required information and noted with an asterisk. This. Okay, my primary number, that's referring to the phone number. So you can see that format there. Unique patient ID, I'm gonna put the one that we've selected for this patient. All right, and then from here, I can select my organization. Again, these options and available in the dropdown are what's available in Health Directory. So I'm gonna go ahead and submit this query. And I get a note that it has successfully added that relationship. So here's the relationship I added. I know this one's mine because I didn't specify a provider or practice. Once it's created, I can do things like I can make a copy of it. Maybe I'm just going to change one thing about this. Just so I can tell the difference.
And just, I mean, most of the time you should not have to use the manage acres piece because you guys have real-time acres set up. So if an ADT comes from one of your interfaces and comes across, it should be part of your acres feeds. It should just be able to search in the patient that way. But we just want to make sure that you know, if you haven't been in My Gateway before, that you understood how to navigate around that. So most of the time you should just be able to search it for in the patients because it should be in your acres file.
Thanks, Adam. All right, so here's the relationship I've just copied. I can also edit a relationship in this view. And each time it's giving me a note that it was successful. And then also I can expire my relationship. So I'm going to remove this. And you can see it happens right on the screen. Again, you get a note that it was successful. So along with searching, you can add relationships, you can make copies, you can edit them, and you can remove them from Manage Acres. Now, if you have the patient of interest, you can again click on the name to launch patient viewer. This patient viewer is the same as the one that we opened through the patient search. And again, this is your new button for getting to the viewer, the longitudinal record viewer.
Perfect. Thank you,
Any
Hannah.
questions on Manage Acres?
Again, everything that Hannah just went over, we're just trying to get you so that you can find your patients and then click the button to go into the longitudinal record. The training for how to use My Gateway for those who will have access to these modules, will be different and more in depth. But the point here was, in terms of Hannah's good work, was to make sure you knew how to look for the patients whose data you are going to be validating.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move over to TOC viewer. So the transitions of care viewer presents messages that have matched on the acres population that you selected. So these are messages that come in and matched on acres. Here you can again filter for messages based on the patient demographics. you want to find a specific messages for a specific patient. You can also filter messages by the sender of the message. So this list again is going to come from the health directory. So if I want to search for all messages within this time frame from the sender, I'll search that way and bring them up.
No, but just to note, probably as you're going through this and doing the data validation, I would think the first and last name patient search would be sufficient for most of your data validation. You're going to have a test system, so you're not going to have the robust amount of patients in there that you would, maybe in a production. So I think there'll be some, fairly straightforward searches that you'll be doing, but we did want to show you kind of the different multiple paths.
Yep. Okay, for the dates of filtering, the data available would be messages received up to 90 days in the past. But when filtering, the dates are going to return messages based on the encounter date in those messages. So these are showing us under the current filter, we're seeing messages that have the event happening between the 20th and the 22nd. So admission 22nd, the 21st, we see a lot of it looks like AO1 admission messages. If you are actually able to search into the future, and you'll see any messages that have a future date for the event. So in this case, we had some messages that said that the admission happened on the 26th. And we're able to pull that because it's the filter here is based on the date in the message. Patient class filtering is not currently available in pre-production, but it will be in the future. ADT event type filtering is available, so you can filter by event type. And these are the event types that you are able to view in TOC Viewer: AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4, and AO6. So those are the results that you'd expect to see here. And then finally, going to the patient name here, launches that familiar patient viewer screen with the button to the longitudinal patient record. And then one thing I forgot to mention is that it presents a summary of the message here, but you can also click to view the ADT message. This view, if for those of you that are familiar with the prior version of TOC Viewer, this summary view has changed. It's no longer split out into different segments. It's now all contained on a single face sheet. You can view a PDF version and download a PDF version of this face sheet, like so. Or you can also download the raw HL7 message and see what that original content looked like and how it got transformed into this view. So I think that covers the 3 pathways through the My Gateway UI that you can use to get to the longitudinal record.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that. If you want to just open up that patient and we'll just kind of segue right into the next. I'm going to open up Julia. We'll just show one more time kind of where you would launch the longitudinal record. And then I'll pass it over to Grant. We'll show kind of what happens when you click it. So that's where you would click. And Grant, if you want to share your screen, we can have you show kind of what happens once you get in.
Yeah, sure thing. So feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions. Okay, can everyone see my screen with my gateway?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have 3 patients that I use for this. And they're all de-identified data. So in this case, let's just start from the bottom or the top, and we'll go in. Through here, you'll launch the longitudinal viewer, which is, it'll take a couple jumps to get there. I think, actually, yeah. And this is going to outcome, which is embedded inside of my gateway. So the data is broken up into something called widgets or cards. The top one being patient-related information, such as, yep. Then you have other identifiers here for that patient, various addresses that they lived at, and so on and so forth. So then now we're going to go through here and go through each of the different cards. We tried to align this up with Viper as much as possible. So if you notice any differences and would like changes, please let Adam and us know. So going
I just want to caveat that if you want certain layout changes, that'll be a post go live request. Not necessarily for this data validation. This data validation, we want you to focus on, are you seeing your data? What does it look like? Is it accurate? And is it make sure it's there what needs to be shown. So we will have time for the feedback on how things are laid out and such, but that won't be the focus of this initial data validation piece.
Okay, thanks, Adam, for making that clarification. So the first one being problems. Second one being encounters. The location will be on here, just this particular view. We have another update to make before that, but that's just one item. Allergies, we can go through and look at another record for that. Medication orders and requests. The medication, when it was requested, the dosage. Insurance won't be on CCDs, but it will be on V2 messages that do come in. Lab results for here. Clinical documents, you will be able to download the clinical document here, such as the provider note or the CCD or version of it. Procedures here, immunizations, vital signs there. We're updating this to show systolic and diastolic pressure, so that should be something that we know needs to be added there. But is there any questions about this before I hop over to, I guess we can also talk about how to export this information. So I'm not sure if it will be results notifications here or if we'll be able to do it here. But for right now, we're going to use results notifications. From here, you can see the different widgets that we can select. So if we want to go through here and let's say how we want problems, medications, in the care plan, encounters. So you're picking and choosing, and then vital signs. From here, you can go through and both print and download that. So essentially, it's a PDF summary of what we're seeing there. Another option we have here, so this is, because it's a PDF, is really read only. If you want to do some sort of data analysis, you can go through here and actually go to the individual widgets. So let's say we want to export all the medication that that patient has and been prescribed. You can go through here and download it. Let's see if this opens. Okay. In this case, it's going to export that table as it appears. So authored on, medication, dose. This particular example that's there. That's the main part of the demo. Is there other questions or any pause for questions? And then I can also go in and show the other two records.
Hey Grant, this is Bev. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good to hear from you.
Hey, how are you? Good job
Good.
so far. So yeah, just a quick question. If you want to go back to the medications, for instance,
Yeah.
that's just so what is the source of truth? Where's this data coming from? Because me as a validator, like if I'm supposed to validate my data, I'm used to seeing sending V2 messages. And then I go to the viewer and I see if that CBC is there or the allergies came off the ADT, whatever the case may be. How where is this data, especially like medications, vital signs is another one. How like how do we trace this back to the data that we are sending?
So these information here is coming from aggregates of both V2 messages and CCDs. There are mappings that we can show you that goes from each of the V2 fields to map over to what's on the viewer. That gets into a really technical level.
Yeah, mapping guide. I know
Yeah.
I would
So
love
Bev,
to
that is
see.
on our
Yeah,
that is on our radar. And I know you asked me
yeah,
about that last
right.
week. It will come. It just won't be day one. I know it's very helpful for
Yeah,
what we had. So that is in the works. It
I
won't be
know.
ready quite yet.
Regardless of when the mapping table is going to be ready, how am I supposed to differentiate where this information is coming from?
Whether it's
Because,
from a V2 or a CCD.
right, yeah.
In this viewer, you won't be able to do that from that angle.
Oh, okay.
So let's say this row comes from a CCD and this row comes from an ADT or a V2. That's not available on the viewer. Was that your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to understand how I'm supposed to help my validators track a message or the messages that we're sending to test this so that they know what they're looking at is what, when they're comparing it side by side, how do we know that this came
Yeah,
from the last message that was sent, et cetera, et cetera?
so Bev, this is Dennis. If you scroll down to lab results and again, we're still moving some things around for configs, right? You see source. This data is, a lot of it is, or it's de-identified and all that to get it in for demos. You potentially we'll see source there in the real data, which is why we're going in to validate. Still working on some viewer mappings though. There'll be certain fields for that.
Yeah, and that's great feedback. If you want to, the feedback would be if you need a column that says this came from a V2 message or this came from a CCD message or the origin message ID on the V2 or CCD. That's all feedback for us.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of this is configurable. And Grant, maybe, and Bev, I don't want to speak for you, but what I think I'm hearing is you want to hear kind of where data source it potentially comes from.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess when we get down to like a specific lab result that's being presented in the viewer, I imagine, and maybe you'll get to that, Grant, and you can stop me, but will there be other identifying information that goes along with that particular lab result? For
Yep,
instance,
we can
okay,
get that
yeah,
in.
okay.
Won't be on there on day one, but
No, it's just like if I'm trying to validate a CBC that has a particular accession number that I can tie back to that particular result that I sent from my EMR at my hospital, those kinds of comparisons is what I would use to know that what I sent here is what is showing there, kind of a thing. Does that make sense?
it does. Yep.
Okay. Well, and then, but that's not going to, that kind of information will be available on day one or will not?
We have one more update to this screen. I can't
Okay.
speak to the exact detail of what that will be there, but that's really good to know that that's a high importance data element.
Yeah, I'm just not sure then how I'm going to know what I am validating is what I've sent, I guess, is what I'm just trying to get to.
Will you be
Understood.
using the same test patients for different data flows and types?
Would I be using, we will probably be using multiple test patients with multiple different data, mostly V2, but we also send a CCD when a patient is discharged. So I don't know if the CCDs will be part of this view. If it is, then there'll be CCD data as well, but I'm not sure where we're at on that.
But Joanne, I think your point that you're trying to make is, would you send the same data on the same item from the same source? Like for instance, at Munson, we may have one hospital, both hospitals get our lab results. So we'll have the lab results for the same patient, the same day, the same result from Charlevoix Community Works, but also it's going to be sent from Munson Healthcare. So we would need to know which one failed or completed. Like we need to know where all data points come from at all times.
More than just the source or the sending facility.
Mm-hmm.
You need some sort of identifier as well.
Yeah, Grant, I wrote down a note to have data source or sending facility on the columns.
Okay, question. Is this, I know that we're talking through the user role of a tester and a data validator. Is that information still relevant for an end user?
Oh,
Or
I would say yes. I mean, a patient shows up and they say, I just had labs drawn here, then, at this particular facility, then the end user, when they're trying to find that information, can, verify that, yep, this came from such and such hospital, or no, I don't see that here. I mean, yeah, there's lots of use cases for when you would want to know where something came from, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's what my providers are saying, but anyway.
If it's in Viper today, we should expect to see it in the new viewer. I mean, if we had this capability, we shouldn't lose any functionality with validation. We should be validating what we had before in this newer viewer. We shouldn't be losing features.
Understood.
I mean, maybe Grant, maybe in one of your other patients, like, do you have an example of like what a CBC would look like, or
Yeah, Grant, let's
what
bump through the
what a
other
chest
other
X-ray would look
patients,
like,
and maybe
something
that'll
like
help
that.
too.
Yeah. Okay, you can see that this allergy is more complete, but we do want labs. Okay, this one does not have any labs, so they do have vital signs, which is a type of lab, but I think it's technical semantics on that one.
Will radiology reports be available?
On day one, no. I'll let Dennis and Adam speak to that.
Yeah, for this initial data validation, radiology reports will not be available. That'll be forthcoming in the future, in the near future.
Okay, looks like some of that information needs to be added in. So that's definitely going to be feedback of we need to have this information added in. So test result, unit range, all this stuff. But that was your question about CBC, right?
Yeah, can you just click, like, what would I expect to see if I clicked on that?
So when you send it, Bev, likely you'll see the source populated right above there, and I'll give you the date, test, result, unit range right there. But this is,
Yep,
it should all populate with what you send.
I think there needs to be some mapping cleanup, but this would be where it's at.
Okay, so it would be right there. Okay.
Like you did.
Okay.
I can say that data is there in our server. just hasn't made its way to the viewer.
I'm not sure if there's any like lab folks on this call, but I know like the lab information, yeah, that needs at least my lab folks. It's a requirement. They want that displayed. So maybe that'll be when you get it populated with the additional information. But
Yeah, and Bev, as you get doing your data validation, if you know if that's the piece of information like, hey, we need to have this, I'm not seeing this, or the field's there, but I'm still seeing a blank for mine. Definitely that's the feedback we want individual facilities. It may be something how it's coming across or how it's stored or just how our mapping needs to be updated too. So that is exactly the type of feedback we would love to hear as you get into your data validation.
okay, and under lab results, I could expect to see like general labs and microbiology and blood bank and pathology. Is that where I see lab results? And then did I also hear you say that radiology or like x-ray results will not be in the viewer? We're not going to be validating that stuff right now?
Correct.
Yep, not quite yet. That is
Okay,
coming.
so
But we wanted to get this, you know, the ADT and lab to you as quickly as possible to make sure that, you know, you start that process. And then we are actively working on getting radiology results in there for you.
okay, so this 3 week of testing is just for ADTs in lab, no radiology or transcription, no other documents then. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
There potentially could be something that comes midweek and then mid time and saying, hey, we're now ready for this for you. But at this point, it's those two. All right, Grant, do you want to show the one other patient?
I have a quick question
Oh, yeah, go
on,
ahead.
so like operative reports and like the clinical notes there, those won't be available right away, but they will be in the future.
I believe clinical notes will be available,
Okay,
and that's right here. Right now, this is just currently not working, but let's say
okay,
once, yeah, it's not currently working, but this is exactly where it would be.
okay,
And then you'll also be able to download the complete CCD. I believe that's the case, but please don't quote me on that. But this is where that would be.
okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions at all? If not, I'll kind of go into the process of data validation and how to report issues and such and provide feedback. So hopefully this looks fairly intuitive for you. You know, we're really excited about launching this new viewer with a, you know, out of a FHIR repository. So this is a lot of hard work coming to fruition, and I hopefully it will be a process as it, you know, continues to grow. We get your feedback. So we expect it to be, you know, dynamic, similar to the way, you know, Viper was when we first launched Viper. You know, we launched it and then, you know, provided and tweaked it and made it better and enhanced it. So we expect this to kind of follow a similar path. All right, so let me share my screen if there's no other questions on that. And kind of walk through the all right. I don't know if ever is anyone not ever done a ticket with MyHand before using our help desk? Well, this link will be here for you. It is our service desk. And once you log in, you'll come to help desk. And we have a special section just for this data validation that we want to get everything, you know, if you find any data or any items logged, we want to get it out of the email space and get into this. We can track and make sure nothing gets dropped. And we have good visibility into everything as we kind of moving around some different teams that are maybe looking at troubleshooting things for you and fixing it. So, so you click on this help desk item. Oh, sorry. I logged in earlier and I didn't log in. back on the help desk. So you click on the help desk item, and it'll be a My Gateway request because that's how you're getting into it. And you'll notice that this top item is the My Gateway Longitude Record Viewer Data Validation. So if you click on that, it'll put in some items that we need for you to answer to submit that ticket. And that'll get the process started. You'll get a ticket number back, and this will be processed a little differently than our typical production items. So we'll have the project team's eyes on it versus just operational eyes, and make sure that we're monitoring and getting these back to you quickly. So any questions on that? All right. Any final questions before? Oh, so we will give you, so right now you should have gotten your My Gateway setup account and gotten that set up. I saw a chat that maybe somebody did not, or you didn't see it. So let us know if you have not gotten that and gotten that set up. You'll notice that you don't have the modules updated yet. That will be given to you on Monday after we get finished with our second training session. We'll open those modules up to all of our data validators. And also on Monday, you will get the basically a 3 to 5 page, it'd probably be 5 pages because it's taking a little bit more to get screenshots in there. Just kind of like I'll say a cheat sheet training guide. So if you're like, oh, how do I get this again? It'll be a quick 1-pager for you to get a reference, as well as we'll have a video summary of kind of probably from these 2 training sessions we have and put together for you, so that if one of your data validators was not able to make this, they can attend that and catch up on how to do all this. So, and like I said, the data that's going to be populated is going to be from your test feeds. Those test feeds that you currently have always sent in to us are set up to handle and populate the longitude record viewer. And so once you send that data over, it will be populated there. And the 3 test patients we had out there, I just want to, if you do not want to use those, you do not have to use them. They are for if you want to see how your data looks commingled with other sites. So we wanted to kind of pre-provide some shared patients so that if 2 organizations want to both send it and you want to see how your data looks commingled with them on a patient, that provides that opportunity for you. But there is no requirement that that's the patient you have to use. And as always, if you have any other questions as you're going through this, feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions. I'm happy to help.
Adam, Katie has a question about acres files, valid acres files being needed for SSO. Will a valid acres file be needed for SSO?
Yeah, single sign-on. And I know that's kind of like more future tense, like this is the point of this meeting was to, go over what we just covered, but I was just kind of wondering if the future, when the future is here in September, our organization is going to need valid acres for single sign-on.
Yeah, they'll
and to
either
view the
need
LR.
They'll either need an acres file or they'll have real-time acres set up so that it builds that acres file on the fly from your ADT feed.
So acres is required for every which way to access the longitudinal record.
Yeah, acres is how we basically see if you have the right and the privilege to see that patient's data.
Perfect, that makes sense. And just one more quick question while I'm off mute, hopefully. So some of our organizations are sending ORUs, which is like radiology and lab results, and it's going through which we'll say the legacy GLHC InterSystems way. And then the other group of us are sending ORUs, which is like statewide labs and acres routing. When we are sending our test data to MyHIN, which test port should we should be using for the ORUs for the labs?
Do you have a specific sending facility? Typically we've migrated over the ones that were from ISC, but if there were some facilities that, hey, they had an ADT set up to GLHC back in the day and they have an ADT set up to MyHIN, and we found that, hey, they're really the same data type. We don't want both.
Right. Yep. No, that makes sense.
And not the GLHC ones.
Yeah. So for our organizations that are sending radiology and lab, like ORUs, right?
Mhm.
Is that okay to use that test port then? Because it's now, like that will move to the longitudinal record, or does it have to be a statewide labs ORU?
It
Port?
does not have to be a statewide lab port. No, if they were just sending
Okay.
labs. To the new-
Okay, yep. And I'm speaking to, we're doing testing with Aspirus, who's doing statewide labs, but I was just wondering is, you know, again, future sense, what to expect and what's coming down the line. Thanks, Adam.
No, and if you have any specific site, like, hey, this is the port. If you want me to run through any of those, let me know. I'm happy to help too. We can kind of track down exactly if we have a specific item.
Sean, we can give you every information we know on 829, I think is the tier 3.
Okay, great. I think expanding on that grid that Adam presented in April, because that was done like within the last 5 minutes of that call. And I know some customers didn't even know about what that was going to look like until I showed them a snapshot. So I think covering that probably at the beginning of the agenda, that way gives us time to discuss. That'd be perfect. Thanks.
Any last questions?
Yeah, hey Adam, it's Bev
Hey, Bev.
again. Hey, can you run down the list of information we should expect to see in the new longitudinal record starting next week?
Oops, sorry. Was I muted when I talked? I
I
can't.
think so. I was like,
Oh,
either
sorry. I was answering and then I thought I had
Okay.
unmuted and then I looked down and it was still muted. So I didn't know if I'd actually clicked it again or not. You will see ADT, lab, and CCDs.
Okay. Do we know what type of ADTs you guys are expecting to, or that you can handle in this new viewer? I mean,
Yeah, baby, or sorry, Bev, is your question about AO1, AO2s? All,
yep,
yep,
all the,
it
yep.
does. Don't take all of them.
Okay. And are you expecting to handle like merge messages, that kind of ADT functionality?
I can't
Are you
speak.
talking about common key?
No, I'm not talking about, no, I'm talking about a merge message that happens from the organization. I just want to know how I should help direct my registration people when they are doing the testing. You know, when we do our normal, when we have our, you know, testing script that we follow, that's part of testing. And I'm just wondering if you knew yet whether, you know, you were accepting those kinds of messages in the viewer, because we would then include them in our test script.
Great question, Bev. I think I asked the same question to Brian earlier. That came from our data integrity group.
Yeah, I would. Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
I was gonna say merge messages usually happen in the MPI, common key and all that, and I don't think we have the right folks for that, but we'll get you the answer here. Because that happens prior, right? Of merging two local MRNs together and then smashing into the common key. More in a common key MPI figures type thing. So Bev,
Okay, so
we'll get back to you.
okay, all right, yeah,
Right, the common key will reflect in the viewer how that ties, but you're talking local merge, I believe, which happens before, right, with common key stuff. So
yeah, and our facility does not participate with common key, so we will not be sending or expecting a common key back from you.
okay, yes,
Okay,
right. So it would be a
and
merge in the EMPI with all that. So that's a different. Just don't have the right folks here for that.
okay, and then lab, you said, are you taking all finals or any prelims, or what's your philosophy on lab result types?
Yep, we will
Joe,
show
you-
both final and prelim, and we'll identify them that way and the viewer.
Okay,
Yep. And Bev, I know
right,
you do have those questions to me. I have there was one last one I was getting answered today. So by tomorrow you'll have my response and all those questions too.
okay. Radiology results, we're not expecting those before go live. Is that correct? That's what I thought I heard you say. I just want to make sure before I pass that information on to radiology people.
They are not available quite yet. There's
Okay.
potential that they could be here by go live, but I can't commit to that quite yet.
Okay, and then CCDs. Okay. What about, I heard Grant mention some kind of documents will be available and some will not. We consider those kind of transcription kind of documents. Do you know what types we can expect to see? I heard OR reports, maybe not, but maybe some other clinical documents. Do we have a heads
Yeah,
up?
it's going to be ones that come out of the CCD. So.
Oh, okay. So, oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. Thanks.
No, thank you for the questions. All right, we have 4 minutes left. Anyone have any last questions? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. You will get an email on Monday letting you know that your modules are opened up and you can begin your data validation. So if you have any questions that you kind of think about after this meeting and you want to ask them, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.